This is a Film Stories original podcast.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Laurence Boyce, who is a programmer, a writer, a festival goer extraordinaire. He's previously been my guest on the John Bleasdale Book Club, the James Bond Book Club podcast, which looks at Ian Fleming's original novels from the 007 series. And so if you want to listen to that episode, it was the episode on Octopussy, actually the last episode of that series, you can do so where all good podcasts are found. So thank you, Laurence, for joining me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Always good to speak to you, and I look forward to talking about this year's Karlovy.
Karlovy is one of the reasons that I have been a little bit behind on putting episodes of Writers on Film online, because I've been going to several festivals. I've been to Taormina, Karlovy, Rimini, and Bologna's Cinema Ritrovato Festival. So this is an opportunity for us to do a wrap of Karlovy and to talk a little bit about the festival vibe as well. Karlovy takes place in the Czech Republic, about an hour and a half away from Prague, although as somebody once told me, everywhere is an hour and a half from Prague in the Czech Republic, so not much news there. But it is, am I right in saying for you as well, Laurence, it's a kind of unique festival?
I think it's a very unique festival. What it has, it's one of whatever it means. It's an A-list film festival. You know, it has that status within the film festival world. And often A-list film festivals can mean insanity, for want of a better word. Cannes, Berlin, all those kind of festivals engender, especially for those who are in the industry and working with film, a certain amount of running around, a certain amount of exhaustion, very first world problems, but still those who work within the industry do find that. Karlovy is a very busy festival. It's a very important festival for the industry, and there are lots of things going on, but more so than many festivals of its kind, you still, I think, feel room to breathe. I think there's a chance to really take stock amongst some of the insanity, and you still manage to calm slightly. And I think it's partly because many festivals, the industry and the audience are divided. And I think Karlovy is very good at showing you a young and enthusiastic audience. You actually get a sense of people, not just us industry yahoos, but just people who are cineasts, film fans, going to see whatever they can see from across the world. And I think that's interesting.
Absolutely. I think that's a defining point of this festival, is the openness of the festival to punters and the way the general public really fuel the festival. There's an absolute buzz of excitement around the place. The center of the festival is a thermal hotel, which is a towering modern structure in what is otherwise a sort of historic bath town. There's fountains everywhere which dispense sulfuric water for anybody wishing to risk their neck. A little bit like anal sex. I've heard it's good, but I have no intention of actually trying it. But
you're such a loss to the Karlovy tourist board, but please do.
Put that on the poster.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that I've tried, but it smells of bad eggs, and I'm not willing to risk it, frankly.
And of course,
I'm talking about the water now.
Of course, indeed. And of course, as we alluded to, we both have a love of James Bond as well. And at one end of Karlovy is the legendary Grand Hotel Pub, in which screenings and the occasional party take place. And those in the know that in the 2006 Daniel Craig Casino Royale. It was actually served as the exteriors for said titular casino. So for Bond fans, there's always a fun little pilgrimage to that place to at least see the outside of Casino Royale.
Yeah, I mean, other from another end of the spectrum, Queen Latifah made a film set there as well. I forget the name now, but it's got holiday in the title. It's sort of Last Holiday or something like that. And
Okay, that one did pass by me. Yeah.
that passed by you, okay? And
Yeah.
also, it served as inspiration for Wes Anderson, I believe, with his Grand Budapest Hotel.
I've heard that story that was one of the many inspirations behind that as well. So it serves as it's very much a spa town, but it's very much a cinematic place as well, in many
Yeah,
ways, shapes, and forms.
I mean, one of the best cinemas is the sort of municipal theatre, which is about halfway down the sort of there's a river that runs through the town, and everything is more or less either side of that, and there's this beautiful theatre that has been sort of repurposed as a cinema for during the festival, and it's just gorgeous. Absolutely, the stalls, the seats, the architecture, the internal architecture, the interior design, I should say, is absolutely magnificent. So well worth if you have the opportunity of going there as a as a punter, as somebody who just wants to get some tickets and go and see some films. The festival is organized into a series of sections, including an international competition which boasts premieres, either European or world premieres. It has a sort of best of the festivals section. It has a section called Proxima, which I believe, you can correct me if this is wrong, Laurence, but it's kind of like an upcoming talents sort of.
It replaced, there was a competition called East of the West, which focused more on East European, Central East European, sort of around that area films. And Proxima sort of came in to replace it to be more encompassing of films from across the world. And yes, so Proxima probably focuses on more up and coming directors than the aforementioned Crystal Globe, which is air quotes the big competition at the festival. But yes, that's the Proxima section of the festival.
Yeah, the Crystal Globe is, of course, their sort of Palme d'Or or Golden Lion or Golden Bear, if you will, and a very handsome trophy it is as well. They always have little shorts that they film, especially for each festival, which sort of features a former awardee or a visiting star, and they always sort of haul out the Crystal Globe at some point and thunk it on the table with a satisfying heft.
And they usually also destroy the award or do something to the award. How shall I say? Reverence, especially in the trailers, is dealt with a healthy dose of satire. I think in
Yeah.
many of those trailers, which I think is quite nice. So the likes of John Malkovich, Jude Law, Johnny Depp, many Benicio del Toro, many actors are in those trailers, alongside less familiar to ourselves, but Czech audiences would also know a great number of actors in those trailers. So again, even the trailers, they're not very po-faced, in which some trailers could be. And again, I think it's a mark of maybe the festival as well, where it does feel big and important, and there's a seriousness to there, but there's also an inclusiveness that maybe, just maybe, some of the bigger festivals slightly miss the mark on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I just saw a recent one this year where Harvey Keitel was complaining about having one of the awards dropped on his foot and breaking his foot and things like that. And so it's a really, it's a lovely grace note to the festival that they have this sort of self promotion, which at the same time underscores its sense of humor. Um, and very sort of Central European, if I might say so, in terms of
Mhm.
its humour as well. There's something kind of wry and straight faced, even as it's satirising itself. The final competition wrapped up last night. We're recording this on Sunday, and it wrapped up on Saturday. And look, we should go through some of the winners before we talk a little bit about the more generally about what we've seen. So the winner of the big prize, the Crystal Globe, was a Czech-Slovak documentary called Better Go Mad in the Wild, directed by Miro Aramo. And this is a film which I saw last night, actually. As soon as I saw it had been awarded, I went on the online platform that they provide for journalists and saw that it was only 73 minutes long and decided, okay, I'm gonna watch this for this conversation. And I was delighted in the film. I thought it was, I think it was a film that some of our friends who are on the sort of WhatsApp or the Facebook groups as journalists hadn't seen this film or even heard about it. Sorry, my village bells are beginning to toll, so I'll just close the window. And they'll just be a nice ambient sound to them. Um, it's a documentary, as I said, of two brothers who are very eccentric. They're twin brothers, identical twin brothers, and they live on a farm where they keep chickens and cows and whatnot. And they both have sort of very long beards, white beards, and they drink quite a lot and smoke quite a lot. And they sort of are very theatrical and tell stories and poetry and a very game, shall we say, for silliness and teasing each other, and it's just a bizarre sort of document of a relationship. There's a political angle as well because the two brothers were very anti-communist and were part of an underground movement which published pamphlets against the regime and were actually awarded by the were granted civic honors when they later in their lives in recognition of this work. So it's funny because it actually links to what we were just saying about the festival itself, in that it uses this humor, which seems to undercut while at the same time actually supporting the thing that it's valorizing. So, for instance, it will have talking cows in the narrating part of the story. We live on the farm as well, and that sort of thing. And it's just very, very entertaining. And at 73 minutes, it doesn't outstay its welcome. You're quite happy to, and also there's sort of grace notes of how. About age and mortality. These are men at the end of their lives, and they are thinking about. One of them says at one point, I don't think I'll ever fall in love again unless it's in a dream." And it's a kind of. I thought that's a stunning revelation. Really, that's sort of you don't hear that sort. That's sort of a nice, interesting, and original thought that the film allows you to ponder without ever becoming morbid or morose.
I think it's, I haven't seen the film yet, and I do think it maybe is quite interesting because I think it's fair to say that it is a surprise winner. It took a lot of people by surprise. Anytime you're at a festival, there is certain buzz, there is certain talk about certain films, and that one hasn't really been talked about, especially because some of the films, not just at Karlovy, but often, for want of a better word, local films to that area. It's not that they're not necessarily strong, but there are sometimes films that come from the local area of a festival, such as the Czech films here, that speak to that local audience that sometimes are quite good, but you also know it won't travel. And so sometimes when you see there's a Czech film or whatever, there's a couple that get a buzz, but there's a couple that sort of are not talked about very much. Now it'll be interesting to see what happens with this film. Now it has the Crystal Globe behind it. It's the first film since 2017's Little Crusader that won the Crystal Globe for the Czech Republic. It'll be an interesting one to see. As you pointed out, it's a short documentary, which also perhaps reflects that this year has also been, ironically, I think, a year of the long film as well, but we can get into that a little bit later. So I'm intrigued myself to see it, and we'll see how and if international audiences go for it, because I do think it's snuck up on people a little while, so hopefully the notoriety of the Crystal Globe will get a few more eyes on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this extends beyond Karlovy Vary in terms of like French films that can Italian films at Venice, German films at Berlin. Well, I haven't been to Berlin, but I assume it's probably the case. Aren't necessarily the strongest films in those respective countries, because if you're a strong Italian film, you dream of going to Cannes more than Venice, perhaps. And if you're a strong, French film, maybe you dream of going to Venice more than Cannes. Um, it feels like films are given the home advantage, shall we say, in the selection process. There are going to be more slots for French and Italian films than maybe for films from other parts of the world in those respective competitions. I'm not sure if that's entirely accurate, but it's certainly how it seems when you're at those festivals.
I mean, of course, this year there were plenty of, there was a couple outside of competition. Slovak film Promise I'll Be Fine, which is again an up and coming director, Katerina Gramatova. We had Caravan, and again, you'll have to correct me when the Caravan, I believe that was first on at Cannes. But that was a big success for the Czech Republic only a few months ago, again showing here in a special screening. So obviously they were showing those films off, but as other festivals had them, the competition was out for them. And then again, within the main programs within Proxima and within the Crystal Globe, there are always a few films.
Well, let's talk
and again,
about
some of them.
let's maybe that'd be a good segue to talk about the one of the strongest films I saw at the festival, and in fact, it was one of the films that I think was in the front running for the Crystal Globe. It did pick up a prize or two, which is Broken Voices. Did you get the opportunity of seeing this?
I did see Broken Voices. I thought it was very strong. I It's one of those strange films where you almost need to see it. It's one of those films that almost reading the synopsis and knowing what's going to happen is a shame almost, because the film is sometimes an exercise in waiting for something and waiting for revelations. And I think in a way that it's almost impossible to do so now, but
I
it
think
works on this level of
I think if you
slow
like,
dread.
I could give a very sort of general synopsis, which won't spoil anything, but it's kind of coming of age story set around a very a high quality choir, and they are being it's two sisters. And it's told very much from the point of view of the younger sister. Her sister is in the team, the A team, as they call it, and there is this charismatic sort of choir leader who is also, to some extent, has the destiny of these girls in his hands, because he's teaching them, he's leading them, but he's also choosing who gets to go to America on a tour that everybody wants to go to. And as you say, I think things develop, which it's better if you see the film and discover them with the story.
And it's one of those films that, once again, all films have hopefully a universal appeal. There are things that touch us all, but there are certain films, especially at festivals, that sometimes have certain references and certain bits to them that can be very specific. And that even watching them, that they are not going to go very much beyond their home countries. That is not necessarily a problem with the film. It is just how their story is told. And I think Broken Voices is one of those titles that could be very much a breakout title for everybody who's listening. There's a good chance it's at least going to come to festivals across the world. And it was one of those titles that I think, I hate to use an industry buzzword, but again, ironically, the buzzword is buzzy. It was one of the buzzy titles at Karlovy. Lots of people talked about it, and it seemed to affect people in lots of ways. And that is, and when you're at a festival and that sort of film gets that sort of word of mouth, you do feel that there is something going to be resonant. There's going to be a resonance with that film across the world. And like I say, I am expecting at the very least a fulsome festival life over the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And of course, Katerina Falbrova picked up a special prize as the best actress, an acting prize for Broken Voices at 12 years old. That's a phenomenal achievement. Um, the best actress role for the Norwegian film "Don't Call Me Mama" was won by Pia Tjelta. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that correctly. Pia Tjelta.
Either am I, but I'm sure our
Okay.
Norwegian friends will correct us at some point if we haven't.
I hope so, or just punch me in the
Yeah.
face if they see me. The male actor Alex Brendemühl picked up the Best Actor prize for When a River Becomes a Sea, the Spanish film, which at 3 hours was a difficult choice because this again going back to first world problems, the seats in the press screenings leave a lot to be what how what, I can't complete that phrase. A lot to be
Desired.
desired. There you go.
A
Thank you
lot to
so
be
much.
desired.
Well, not for the last time. John Bleasdale is lost for words. Uh,
Yeah, they're hard on your bum. Basically, I think is the phrase that we're looking for.
we're always
Um,
coming back to it.
yes. I mean, it's a festival where no, it's not a festival. I will retract that because it's not the festival's fault, not even fault per se. But it just so happens that it seems to be that people are going back to making longer films again. In competition, there are plenty of films. The film you just mentioned is 3 hours long. The Visitor, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Cinema Jazeera, the same. Even the archive screenings. You know, we went from Barry Lyndon at 3 hours to the absolute classic Showa at 9 hours. It seemed to be a festival where many, many, many of the films were extremely long. This is not bad per se. I've always said any film justifies its running time. A 4 minute film and it's not very good can feel like 5 hours. A 5 hour film that is wonderful goes by in a minute. I was there at Barry Lyndon and it may be 3 hours, 10 minutes, but it did not feel like that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think
So
Barry Lyndon is one of the shortest long films I've ever seen. It's sort of
exactly. Now, this is not again necessarily a critique of the competition there this year. I think most of the films justified their running time, but I'm more of an interest in seeing how. I think it's interesting to see and comment upon how directors are now looking for that space and time to tell stories. Not are all necessarily successful, but I think it is interesting to see how art house film, again, art house in quote marks, whatever that means, they're finding a balance between some are shorter, some are longer. For example, I know the Luminous Life is the Portuguese film, and it was compared to everything else, it felt light and interesting and
yeah.
fun and 90 minutes after other films are difficult, not in a bad way, but just more of an go through the emotional ringer in a different way. And that's also good about a program. You have a program and you have different films and different ideas running through them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I agree with that film. That was a very, it was a film that almost risked and knew that it was risking sort of ephemera, that it was just, a guy wandering around a city without any particular problems, worrying about his love life a little bit, and young guy, 24 years old. Uh, and it's just beautifully filmed, beautifully put together. The you feel like you're just observing something, a slice of life, rather than something that's been contrived. And I think to go to the point about film length, and I do think it's not specific to Kiv, to Karlovy. I think we've felt it now for 2 or 3 years that there is a sort of overly generous. There's a slight lack of discipline, I think, in storytelling where you just don't need to be there that long. And I know that films are more than telling a story. Story can be, in fact, the least interesting part of a movie. It can be about atmosphere and place and all the rest of it. But I was suggesting to a film director who I was talking to that we should force directors to actually attend festivals and sit through their peers' films because they might start thinking, "Hang on a minute, there's a few things I could learn from this." As in not just good things and inspiration, but also bad things, as in my bum hurts. I want to get out of here. I think this story is done.
I think in some ways it is a reaction to not only what we have nowadays, which is, and again, I'm trying to tread carefully here because I don't want to sound like, the old geezer in the corner complaining about things, because I can watch YouTube videos along with the next person, but we live a life which is often our imagery and our stories are these short, very, very quick images. And those who know me know that a part of my work is to do with short films.
Right.
My life is to do with working with short form content, but YouTube and things like that, those sort of things are very, 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 very short form content. Now, ironically, say the Marvel movies in the dominant way of popular culture are usually quite long, but they're also about crash, bang, all that
Voila.
kind of stuff. And what you see sometimes are these films that are longer and they might be called slow cinema, which take a more contemplative view because it seems to rebel against those dominant modes, which often cinema can do well. There are other bits that don't get shown as much. I will say, The Visitor, for which the director Vaidautas shared the Best Director award. It's a Lithuanian film. I've known the director's short films in the past, and this is his debut feature, and I've been eagerly anticipating it. I thought it was a very, very good film. It's about the main character, Danielis, who has a child. He's living in Norway, and he goes home to sell his father's flat. His father's obviously passed away, and it's basically him. It's just basically him living in this place, trying to reconnect with old friends and finding that it's not the same as it was when he was younger. He is a different person, and he wanders around the city, and that's the film.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. And it's one of those films that I know some of my peers found it a bit difficult. I responded to it a lot, but it is very different to some of the films that you can see in mainstream. And, it's one of those films that you say very much, I think it's very good. I think it's going to do very well. I don't think it's going to be knocking the next Avengers movie off the top of the box office chart, but it will probably have a good and healthy festival life. And I think it's for me, it spoke to me. Now, other people, it didn't speak to as much, but for me, I think it's a really interesting, slow, but serene type of affair that washed over me and made me think about a lot of things. And some of the films are like that within the festival as well.
What sort of life do you think a film like The Visitor would have in Lithuania?
I think it will have a strong life. There's a couple of things that, for example, you have the director Laurence, who also came from short films, but then his first feature, Pilgrims, won the best debut feature film. It's the Horizonte Award. I can't remember if it has a specific title, but he won that 2 years ago. And if I'm right about The Visitor, I think Laurines may have been the editor. There's a thing that all the Lithuanian film industry are friends. So those of you who know Slow, Marta's film from a few years ago that won at Sundance, she won the Best Director at Sundance in fiction. Well, she co-wrote The Visitor with Vaidautas. There was another Lithuanian film in the Proxima competition called Renovation. Well, Vaidautas was the DOP on Renovation. There's this thing where not only is the industry small, but because the country is relatively small, people do, this would be a film that would get a release. This would people, and I think people would go and see it as well because there is a sort of national pride there, and there is an audience there that might not exist in say, a UK theatrical setting, but I think people would go check things out at festivals and things like that, especially with a director whose previous short films, his first was in Semaine de la Critique, his second short film was in Venice, and his third short film was in the Cannes official competition. So there's a sort of weight of expectation there was behind him anyway.
And the composition of the audience in Lithuania. I'm sorry, I'm casting you as our Baltic expert here because you live in Tallinn in East Estonia, and I know those countries are very different, but all the same. Um, so the audiences in Lithuania who go and see The Visitor, would they be cinephiles? Would it be a popular audience? What?
I think it would be mostly cinephiles, but it's also things are very different in terms of what you might class as a popular film because
Right.
of the populations of the country.
Yeah, there's very small comparatively.
You know, if this was in Estonia and you said Britain, well, a film is done mildly all right if 1 million people go and see it or something like that. Well, that's the entire population of Estonia. That's not going to happen.
Gotcha.
It's what counts as a popular film and how many people go see that film might seem vanishingly small compared to some international box offices. But relative to those countries and their populations, so yes, I mean, again, The Visitor getting a release in Lithuania, which I'm sure it would do, it would not knock probably mainstream Hollywood off the top slot, but there would be enough coverage that cinephiles and curious people would go and see it. It would probably live a bit more than an art house life than
That's
in other countries, maybe.
That's interesting because I think it's important as well that these films live beyond the festivals. I was talking to a Canadian, I should say Canadian. He's born in Hungary, but he's done most of his creative work in Canada. A producer, Robert Lantos. He's produced a couple of Cronenberg films, Barney's version. He's a whole has a storied career, and he was telling me that we published this interview in Variety if you want to read it, but he was telling me about how basically there's a bifurcation of film, and part of it is the popular blockbusters we've been talking about, and part of it is films that are only ever shown in festivals, and they turn around festivals and they're not seen by anybody else. And he saw this as sort of dangerous, essentially, because a lot of the most interesting storytelling was happening in films that nobody was ever seeing. And so that as I was, because I'd only just spoken to him in Rimini before I came out to Karlovy, I was very aware of this as I was watching films like The Visitor, films like well, even The Winner from last night. And I was sort of thinking, I wonder if this film will play at the BFI, at some places that the South Bank, some places where it will gain an audience, and how many people will see these films. Otherwise, there is a danger we end up sort of talking to a vanishingly small group of people.
I think, but this is also the importance of the festivals that where something like especially Karlovy can work. One of my favourite films at the festival was it was a short film by Mark Jenkins. Those of you know Mark Jenkins' work, features such as Bait and Ennis Main. And that short was called I Saw the Face of the God in the Jet Wash. I shall refrain from talking about it anymore, apart from I loved it and it was great. But it was screening in front of Ben Rivers' Bogencloche. Premiered in Locarno last year, almost a sequel to his feature 2 Years at Sea that follows a hermit called Jake. And it's a wonderful, wonderful film, in my opinion. But it's also a film that is very slow. You sort of really have to know his work, and it's quite an experimental film. And it engendered quite a few walkouts. Now, in the past, I would be maybe the kind of person going, "Oh, you Philistines, how dare you? How dare you walk out? You know, this is an amazing piece of work." But then I realised that, especially a place like Karlovy, this is why they exist. Let's just say, for argument's sake, there's 100 people in that audience. Let's say 50 of them know about Ben Rivers. They've come because this is a Ben Rivers film. But then there's 50 more who don't know anything about his work. They know nothing. They know zilch about him apart from reading this synopsis and going, "I'll give it a go." And 45 of them decide, okay, it's not for me. It's a shame, but it's not for them. But if there are 5 there that stay, that have never heard of his work before, that have gone, actually, I found something here, something that I can grasp onto, and I've never heard of this director before, I think that's a win. Because that's what festivals should be about. We can't like everything, but we should be given the opportunity to try. And something like Karlovy, the great festivals work on this level. People don't go to X festival and go, I want to see, I'm going to this festival because I'm going to see this, this, and this. They end up going, I'm going to the festival. What are you going to see? I don't know, but I know that festival and I trust it. I'm going to find something there. Our big problem, I think, as a society, amongst many, many, many other things, is sometimes of the fragmentation, we end up too much preaching to the converted. Ben Rivers is a certain type of filmmaker, and therefore it is only goes to those people who like that certain type of filmmaker. And what we need to be encouraged to do is try and check some stuff out that we don't necessarily know about, we might not like. Now, we should be given the facility to say, I don't like that. And we shouldn't be totally tutted out of the room because if we do leave halfway through and things like that. But festivals give that space, and that's also why they exist. Yes, they become a thing for us as journalists to write about these films, to create discourse. They're great meeting points for industry and helping talent. But for audiences, they're a space to discover films they will see soon, but hopefully, and one of the most important things for me is to see stuff they may have never seen before. And if you can engender that with audiences, I think that's a really important thing to do.
I think that's really well put, and I totally agree with you, Laurence. I think that is even more important when you have a festival like Karlovy that has a large contingent of the public. So, we might sometimes. I mean, the thing is, if you go back in time, people were going to see Ingmar Bergman films. People were going to see Kurosawa movies. They were going to see movies which were challenging and were from different parts of the world that they maybe had no experience of, and they had to learn a language to appreciate to some degree, not the literal language, but the visual language and the cultural language. And so we shouldn't also condescend to audiences. They are full of people like us who are willing to be challenged, and that's what they want. And I agree. You've turned on a light bulb in my head there, because the actual fact that festivals have films that we don't like is vital. Because it shows they're doing their job. It shows that they're providing enough breadth that I will walk out of the film going, that was nonsense, or I didn't like that, or that was opaque. I didn't even understand what's going on there. And I'll meet someone and they will say, that was my favorite film of the whole festival.
Yeah.
That's pretty much true of any festival I've ever been to. And those people who I totally disagree with will be just as knowledgeable about film, etc., as I proclaim without any qualification to be. Yeah.
And that is, once again, with all due deference to Cannes, with all due deference to Venice. I mean, I will actually be, it's been a while since I've been to Berlin, but Berlin and maybe Karlovy have always seemed to me that you get a sense that as an audience member, as just a cinema fan, you can get tickets and you can go see the film and you're catered for going to see the films. I've always felt, and it's been a while since I've been, Cannes and Venice is this strange labyrinthine thing of how industry get the tickets and actual, again, air quotes, real audience members are slightly shut out in certain ways.
Well, they're sort of pushed to the periphery. I mean, in Cannes, there are several cinemas that are out of town where you can get tickets, but they're out of town. So you're literally not in the same place. In Venice, there's the Pala Biennale, which is a big sort of temporary pop-up, huge pop-up screen, and they tend to show everything the day after, and that tends to be where the public go. That tends to be so again, there is a sort of separation. And the other thing I think that affects big festivals, which smaller festivals like Locarno, Karlovy, Tromsø, Tallinn, Black Nights, the big festivals kind of have certain, let's say, commitments to certain filmmakers, and those filmmakers take up a lot of slots. So you have to have the new Ken Loach, you have to have the new um, uh, Thomas Wittenberg or the new Claire Denis or the new whoever. You have to. Those are the filmmakers. The Dardenne brothers are not allowed. You're not allowed to say no to them. You've got
Yeah.
to have them, and so that leaves a lot fewer slots for film for taking risks, and that's also why often you'll find some of the most exciting new cinema in the sidebars. And I always think the Kanzan, for instance, in Cannes, they always have this sort of reel at the very beginning that they show the intro to every festival, where they have sort of stills from films that have previously shown at Kanzan, and you're sitting watching and going, "How are these films not in the main
Yeah, exactly.
competition?" It's like Whiplash, Florida Project, The Indian Runner, Aki Kaurismäki films, Takeshi Kitano films, and you're just thinking, "How the hell did this not get into the main competition at Cannes?" And the reason was, well, because all these filmmakers were either first-time filmmakers or young filmmakers, or they weren't among those names who are guaranteed berths.
I mean, there's always, it's always a journey of discovery, and there's always not as an irony that many of the films that we see, I mean, not just at Karlovy, but many festivals, will be at that festival and then we'll never hear of them again.
Mm.
Cannes has a bigger success rate, but that's because it's Cannes, and therefore they have more of a pick. I'm just, ironically, just talking about Ken Loach, I didn't realize that a former Crystal Globe winner way back in 1970 was actually Kes. So Kes is actually a former Crystal
Wow.
Globe winner of Karlovy way back in the mists of time.
When
And
Yes,
yes,
but back before the fall of the Soviet Union.
yeah, yeah. But there's always going to be some films that, once again, I mean, the Crystal Globe winner this year has caught people by surprise. So we will once again. I saw it at the time. Little Crusader was a very delicate and wonderful piece of work, but this was a film that won the Crystal Globe in 2017. But it didn't do anything, and I'm sure I'm outside of the Czech Republic one of the only few people who remember that film.
Mm.
Um, Again, I'm not saying it didn't deserve the Crystal Globe. I'm not saying it didn't deserve to be shown at the festival. But sometimes things do not go all over the place, do not go all over the world. But then we who work in the industry, and strangely those audiences who come to check out the festivals, have this important memories of films screened and places been.
True, and also I think something that's changed over the last 3 or 4 years has been the appearance of Mubi, which who are now coming into festivals and sort of hoovering up sort of quality movies, which previously, you're right, would have, they'll have a spin on the festival circuit and then kind of disappear. They're kind of having a spin on the that now the trajectory seems to be have a spin on the film festival circuit and then go to Mubi. And by going to Mubi, you get a lot of eyes on your
Yep.
film, and essentially many more than, there is a lifespan to a movie. Movies don't, they might last forever and then wait and to be rediscovered. A lot slip through the gaps, Hopefully, I mean, this is another part of the film festival that I really enjoyed was the retrospective section, which is increasingly, I think it's a sign of age, I'm drawn to at more and more film festivals. Whereas I used to think they were a waste of time. I used to think, why am I watching old films at a festival to promote new films, which was my stupid sort of take on it. And nowadays, I look forward to seeing what Cannes and Venice are proposing. And Locarno, the retrospective, has for many people been a highlight for many, many years. And at Karlovy, they were showing, as you mentioned, Barry Lyndon, which you saw. I saw it at Cannes, was my best film experience of the year so far, I think. And I saw several John Garfield films, an actor who needs to be rediscovered. He was at the height of his fame when he died, where he was just beginning a terrible decline, mostly as a result of witch hunting, because he had this terrible view that people should have some level of social justice in their lives, exacerbated by paranoia and alcoholism. Paranoia totally justified, by the way. But I watched The Breaking Point and Body and Soul, which were both marvelous films and talk about economy and talk about, absolutely on a craft level, hitting it out of the park. Body and Soul, if you haven't seen it, audience, I recommend it instantly. You will rewatch Raging Bull afterwards with new eyes. And for that matter, every boxing movie, Fat City, every boxing movie that's been made since, because Body and Soul is pretty much where they started. And also Gloria by John Cassavetes, who is a film I've seen before, but seeing it on the big screen, the biggest screen in Karlovy, was an absolute revelation. And seeing it with an audience as well. I remember talking to you about Barry Lyndon before you went to see it, Laurence, and saying how when you watch it with an audience, you realize how much funnier the film is, because everybody is roaring at lines that you didn't even think were funny, but now you see them in that context, you realize, of course they are.
I think it's there is sometimes this unfairness which comes out of, oh yes, I went to see, I was at X Festival and I saw their classic strands, and of course all the classics were so much better than the modern rubbish in competition, which I always clap back and go slightly, yes, but they, the thing about a classic strand, it's classics. They are showing things that are already established. Some of them might have lost things with time and not as well known, but usually they are still established and very well known films that are going to be good. The point of a competition of modern films is something you are mixing it up and you are taking chances. It's always unfair to compare the two, but I do think there is the very basic level, as we've mentioned, to see a film on the big screen somewhere like the Grand Hall at Karlovy is an amazing experience. Something like Barry Lyndon. We understand the world has changed. Everybody can get their nice Criterion edition and their nice, projector and try and show it in the best way that they can at home. And that's wonderful and great for everybody. But as I say, there in the Grand Hall with 1,000 other people, the atmosphere and the feeling changes. And
how excited were people to see it as well? That
exactly.
thing of like, some people are there, have never seen it. Other people are there, have seen it 100 times.
But, again, we have this assumption with us, when I say us, we do work in the industry. A lot of us do know our cinema. You make that assumption that everybody you meet, what do you mean you haven't seen Barry Lyndon? There's almost this assumption, but no, it's not true. Some people haven't seen every film ever made under the history of cinema. This is also a journey of discovery for people, even in that way. There were plenty of people in that cinema seeing it for the first time. And that's why things like that are...
I envy them. I want to go to the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind people and have my memory wiped so that I can see it for the first time.
And indeed, let's face it, at a couple of films in the past, you just want your memory wiped and then be told not to go see that film.
Not restored.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just tell me not to go, thank you, and we'll just leave it there.
Well, before we leave it there, Laurence, I wanted to talk about a part of the festival that we both attended, which was a get-together for a colleague that we lost. It's someone who I don't have any memory of meeting personally, although it's not beyond the realms of possibility that I didn't stop and chat at some point or had some interaction with.
I'm pretty sure you did in the past. I think you did interact with him on a couple of occasions.
Okay, brilliant. Well, but you know him better than I do, so I'll let you take over from here.
So, I mean, this is here to talk about festivals and how they work as well. Karlovy famously has a little meeting terrace for the industry. Therefore, us, who are the great and good, get to scan our badges and we're allowed in. Those who've never been there, it's just a terrace. and we still have to buy drinks and everything like that. There's all the secrets ruined for you. But we have what's called a little terrace crew made of journalists, programmers, even actors, directors, people in the film industry. And more than some festivals, Karlovy seems to engender that sort of crew, a group of friends who, especially when the festival rolls around, we talk about the films we're going to see if there's some parties we can attend, see who's at the terrace, see who's doing what. One of those group was Ásgeir Ingolfsson. He was Icelandic. He actually lived in Prague for many years, and he became a good friend of ours. He was the most nice, kind, insightful, friendly, wonderful person you could ever hope to meet. We all sadly lost him to cancer in January. He was relatively young, and like many people, it was a shock and very sad to lose him. So we all got together. We all raised a toast to his memory. There was music, there was poetry, because Ásgeir, I think, was fair to say he was a Renaissance man. He was a film critic, he was an author, he was a poet, he was a friend, and he was wonderful. So we miss him terribly, but it was good to all be together to remember him. And if you ever meet people who've done the festival circuit a lot, we have stories. Oh boy, do we have stories. So there were many stories that were told. But I will go back to this is also the thing about festivals. Festivals allow us to go see films. They allow us to go and see old things, new films, everything across the board. And we get to indulge our cinephilia, because I think it is fair to say most people, whether they work in the film industry or not, probably attend festivals because of some sort of cinephilia. I'm sure every so often there are just people who would like to go see Dakota Johnson or Stellan Skarsgård or many of the guests that were there at the festival, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful as well. But we go and we see all those films, but we also make friends. We actually meet people that we like. We end up talking about things. And sometimes we disagree, just like you said about films. We can totally disagree about films and what that film was. And we can disagree and we can still get on. And that's the great thing. And I think that's also why festivals should exist. Because festivals aren't just about showing those films in the best conditions. They're about bringing us together to watch stuff, to talk, to react. And I think that's also the great thing about festivals and the cinema experience. And, you know, without it, we wouldn't have met Ásgeir. So if those don't know Ásgeir, go to culturesmuggling.com, and it used to be his website, and you can at least go find out a few more things about him. He was a lovely man, and his memory will always remain within the festival and those friends he made. So if you don't know him, go check him out.
Absolutely, I'll put the website on the show notes as well, so you can click on that and go and discover his work and discover who the man was and is, as he remains amongst his friends. And I totally agree that this is a it's a community, it's a working environment, of course, but it's a community that sometimes has the closeness, with all the contradictions that the word implies, of a family. You know, you can argue and you can cross swords and you can ultimately, hopefully, in the end, hug and make up, and there's a lot of joy and there's a lot of jokes and there's a lot of private jokes. And I've been doing festivals now for I think it's probably over 15 years, 15, 16 years. And it's some of my best friends are people I've met. So it's certainly friends that I've met recently, because it's not like you get to your 40s and 50s and you're still making new friends. But the ones that I'm making via film festivals, which is amazing. It's such a if somebody said you can come to Cannes but you can't see any movies, that would be A, very strange, but B, I would probably still go to Cannes just to see everybody, and the movies amen. Never mind. I'll catch them on Mubi. In fact,
As it was pointed.
that's something I've noticed is if somebody says, "Do you want to meet for a coffee?" And I think, "Oh no, I've got a screening." If I don't have to see the film for some specific work-related reason, and otherwise I'll miss this person, I won't see them for the rest of the year. I'm gonna not go to the screening. I'm gonna go and meet the person to chat and talk.
And, it's very much the same at Karlovy. So dear listeners, beg my indulgence when I will just say, shout out to the Terrace crew because they know who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And thank you so much, Laurence, for joining me. And I can't wait to see you at the next festival.
Looking forward to it. Take care, John.